Hi, I'm Matt and I'm here today to talk about the Teenage Engineering OP-1. The OP-1 is Teenage Engineering's all-in-one portable synthesizer with built-in sounds, samples, effects, sequences and a virtual 4-track tape recorder. The OP-1 features a built-in mic on the top and a line input for capturing sounds. It also has a G-force sensor, which allows you to map parameters to the movement of the OP-1, but we'll talk about this later. It also has a USB port on the side for data transfer and for charging the batteries. The OP-1 has 4 main modes of operation: synth mode, drum mode, tape mode, and mixer mode. Let's look at synth mode first. There are 10 unique synthesis engines in OP-1, each with their own interface. The parameters map to the coloured encoders, giving you intuitive control over the OP-1 sounds. On number 2, we have an envelope to shape the sound. The cow is a delay that mangles the pitch of your repeats. And on number 4, we have modulators. These range from random and regular LFOs to external elements such as movement and sound. This is where the G-force sensor comes in. Let's map the G-force sensor to the cow. So the G-force sensor is set. The amount is up to 46, but let's increase this. You can map it to the synthesis engine or the envelope, and then we can set it to the encoder that we want it to change. So in this case, it's going to change the frequency as we tip it. Okay, let's see what that sounds like. So now that we've created a sound, you can also save these as presets. All we have to do here is check which number we're on, number 3, and then hold number 3. And now we saved a snapshot of the sound. Now let's take a look at drum mode. Drum mode has a selection of sampled kits and drum synthesis. We hold Shift and press number 1, we can listen to all the kits and all the samples are laid out across the keyboard. You can use the keyboard to play these drum beats freehand, or you can also use the selection of sequences that the OP-1 has on board. These sequences can be used with synthesis mode as well. Let's have a look. If you press this button here, it brings up a selection of different sequences. These range from step-by-step sequencing and grid-based sequencing to more chance-related sequencing like the tombola. This one's called finger. As you can see, you only need one finger to play a drum beat, and each key has different drum beat on it. Each time you press a key, it drops a note into the tombola. You can make the tombola spin and you can set the gravity. This is going to get a bit chaotic. Let's switch back to something more conventional. I'm going to use Shift there and select Endless. This is a step-by-step sequencer. If I hold Shift, you get the idea. So there we put in 16 notes. But with Endless you can do up to 128. And just to show you one more sequencer that will look a bit more familiar is pattern. The pattern sequencer doesn't have as many steps as Endless, but it's easier to map out a drum beat and also to change the loop length and the playback direction. So now we've looked at synthesis mode, drum mode, and 3 of the 6 sequencers on board the OP-1. We're now going to look at tape mode. Tape mode is where you record your ideas, whether those are synth lines or drum beats. In this mode, if we press play, it'll play the tape back to us. The 4-track in tape mode behaves like a real tape. You can scrub through the tape with the arrow keys and find crossover points with the blue knot. You can also change playback speed using the white encoder. The 8 buttons along the top of OP-1 now turn into different tape functions. You have a looping in and out point, switching the loop on and off, tape stop, reverse, and stutter. When looping is enabled, you can use the green encoder to shorten or lengthen the loop. Let's prep the tape to record. First, let's find a section of empty tape. The 4 buttons below the screen correspond to the different tracks of the 4-track. Pressing them selects the track and enables it for recording. When playing back, holding a button will also solo the track. Okay, so to record, select a track. Let's go back into synth mode and check the sound that we want to use. Okay, so let's go back to tape mode. If we press this button here, we can see the tempo settings of the tape, and we can also enable the metronome to record to. When we press play, then the metronome sounds. Okay, so let's record this. Okay. And now let's listen back. So now I've set a loop, and let's change the size of this loop so that it starts with the sound. So now we have that recorded, we can record to additional tracks, or we can overdub over the same track. It's worth bearing in mind that this 4-track behaves like real tape. If you cut, erase, or overdub to any of the tracks, it's a permanent change. You can, though, save the audio regions into the temporary memory by lifting the tape track. And you can place this back by pressing the drop button. Now that we've got some sound recorded, let's look at mixer mode. To get to mixer mode, we press this button. From here we have all the panning and level control over the tracks on tape mode. As well as the mixer, you have a master EQ. It's a 3-band EQ with low, mid and high controls attached to the encoders here. You can use the orange encoder to boost all frequencies on the EQ, or you can cut them back to a cleaner sound. There's also a master effects section which allows you to apply the effects that you have from synthesis and drum mode across the whole mix. And then on button number 4, we have the main output level with drive and release for extra grit and compression. Another handy feature is the memorize buttons on 7 and 8. These memorize settings on the effects or the mix for instant recall. Let's apply a memory setting to the cow. First we select cow, then we hold memory button 1 and tweak some parameters. Let's get a lot of feedback and a long delay. And then for the regular setting, no frequency shift, short delay, and very little feedback. Let's hear what that sounds like. This is a really handy performance feature, and it's also great for recording final tracks. Once you're happy with your track, you can cut it to the virtual vinyl on OP-1. Press the COM button, and then begin recording and play your track. Once your track is recorded to the vinyl, you can access it by hooking up your OP-1 to a computer with the USB cable. The vinyl tracks and tape tracks are all accessible from there. On top of all these features, you can also sample external sounds into the OP-1. I'm going to show you how to do this with the synthesis track and the built-in microphone. So I'm going to grab an instrument to sample. Then we go into synthesis mode. Hold shift and press number 1 to bring up the synthesis engines, and then we're going to choose sampler. This will have a sample preloaded, but we're going to record into it. We press the mic button up here with shift, and then we select the source, the built-in mic. So as soon as we're ready, all I have to do is hold a key and then play the sound. So now we've sampled that sound. We can see the waveform here, and we can edit it. So we can set the start and end points. We can also set loop points. And we can increase the gain of the sample to make it a bit louder. You can now use the sample with all the internal effects and sequences. So we'll select Tombola again. So as you can see, you can get some pretty creative results very quickly. The OP-1 is pretty much like a portable studio. You've got a synthesizer, drum machine, tape machine, and a mixer all in one standalone unit. If you want to integrate it with the rest of your gear, you can always connect it up via USB MIDI. The USB connection is also used for data transfer. You can record the output of the OP-1 through the headphone port on the side. The 3.5mm stereo out allows you to plug into speakers or headphones easily. And if you don't have those, there's always the built-in speaker. So that was a brief overview of the OP-1. For more information on the OP-1 or any other teenage engineering products, head over to Gear4music's website.